Good evening, Mr. Jansen. How are you doing tonight?
What is going on? Robert Falco back again with some more juggernauts. This time, we're going to take a look at Boeing, Facebook, and PayPal. So, big companies. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have shares somehow related to these companies, and this should be a good earnings report.
Yeah, this week is just jam-packed. I know we got tons and tons of requests about what everyone wants us to look at. We just, unfortunately, we can't hit them all. We're trying to hit the big boys and girls and some of the ones that either we're in or we know lots of others are in, but we just can't hit them all. First and foremost, though, I want to remind everyone, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Click the bell notification to get the reminder. We know only like 60% of you are following and the others are not subscribed, so make sure you hit that button. Let's jump on into Boeing. It reported this morning. I know you like to trade this one almost daily out there, but gapped up, I think, right into the 50 and had a little bit of selling. It was a fairly decent gap for Boeing. We can jump over to the report here. What were your first thoughts about it?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I've been following this company for a while, so I know Boeing fairly well. They've been around, and I honestly, they were down to what, $85 during COVID, and people were kind of fearing they were going to lose it and not be in business anymore. They have the government contracts backing them up. I don't think they're in any risk of losing that. So I think they're still a stable company, but they have a long way to go. Obviously, the entire industry that their big portion of revenue comes from is airlines. And I think as the airlines start to start flying again and we start to normalize, they will be pretty steady. But they did have in this quarter, they did grow a 44% growth from this quarter to last quarter. That's on face value, that's good. Like that's a solid number. Obviously, you are comparing it against COVID numbers. So while it's good, and obviously the stock jumped since. Personally, it's not a huge win for me. But it is showing that they're starting to get their feet back, and a lot of the when people invest in the market, it's forward looking, not current looking and based on the current value. So I think at least in worst case, it shows that the company has been getting a little footing, and I think investors are excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously comparing to COVID, the comps are going to be pretty easy for them to beat. You know, they lost last year, this quarter, they lost almost $3 billion, and they made $1 billion this time. Earnings are lost from operations. Net earnings are lost. They went from losing 2.4 billion to making 567 million. So yeah, that's great. Really nice improvement in overall revenues. But again, it's comparing it to COVID. So, and I think the 737 Max drama was going on at that time last year. The one thing that I was really looking at was what does their pipeline of orders look like? Like how many planes are they delivering? You can see a big jump in plane deliveries up to 79 during second quarter of 2021 versus 20 of last year. And they have a pretty large pipeline as well. Where was that? I think it was down here. I think it was 363 billion in backlog orders.
363 billion. Yep.
Yeah. So they got 156 planes and $363 billion in backlog orders. 342 billion of that is contractually obligated. So not like they just said, oh yeah, I want to buy a plane, but they're actually in contract for aircraft. So I think that's a huge number.
Yeah, that shows at least the need for the planes. That they have the orders. That's going to shape up a company is a solid target, just to know that you have that on the books coming in. I mean, how much did they make this quarter? With 363 billion sitting there in their banks, they gotta get to work.
They gotta kick out those planes.
Help start making some planes for them. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, they have that backlog, and don't forget, even though the one interesting thing with Boeing, and planes is obviously a huge part of their business, but again, they do other things as far as more government kind of security and space defense, things like that, which is another huge portion of their program. So, and I think that's a huge part of their actual business. And people just think Boeing planes, that's what they do. So even though that they have the plane orders, they still have a lot of the defense contracts. Obviously, not to get into politics, but if the government is giving out more money to defense contracts and things like that, obviously Boeing's going to reap huge benefits from that as well. So forward looking, I think that is a pretty solid safety net for Boeing as well.
Yeah, you could see that. I think it was 6.8 billion in defense, and like over here it talks about the number of planes. Again, I know some of these are helicopters, but then obviously these are all planes too, and these probably cost a pretty penny if I were to imagine. So yeah, they do more than just the commercial aircraft for sure. So I know it gapped up, faded a little bit. You think this gap fills? What would be your play on Boeing here?
I think this is a fillable gap. I would imagine that we do come down. It's a nice gap. We did cross some solid resistance lines. I think in the next week or so, this will fill and close, and then I think we take off again. So I am still bullish on it. I think that's a gap that fills. I think that's going to be a good entry price to try to get into. Where you just drew that line, that gap, I don't think that one ever fills.
Yeah, I keep seeing that this thing does a lot of these like false breakdowns through like descending triangles, and then it ends up going higher. So this definitely could be a repeatable pattern that's happened multiple times over here. But yeah, I don't think this gap ever fills.
Yep.
Obviously, none of these. But yeah, I don't think this one ever does. But this one definitely fillable, and I think that dip is buyable for sure. Probably with a stop, down in here, and you can just accumulate a little bit longer term. They don't have a dividend anymore. I think eventually they'll reinstate that, but that way it doesn't pay you to wait anymore. So you really have to be good about where you're picking your levels because you don't have that dividend anymore.
Most companies in the market from the COVID lows have recovered. If we zoom out, probably to that weekly chart, Boeing and I mean some of the airlines have not as well. The whole industry got absolutely housed. So the fact that this one hasn't, I think we still have room to run to at least test that line just on at least hopes that the industry starts to recover. And again, we do have a little Delta variant coming out, and who knows how that's going to play. If that shuts down flights or restricts people or mask policies or all that stuff, that could all play into it. But I think that we could at least retest that upper gap right before the COVID breakdown.
Up in here at 330.
Yeah, 330. My target is 309 on Boeing. That's I have shares, been just accumulating. I'm holding for that 309 target, and I'm not giving myself a time frame, so I'm not saying next week it's going to be 309. I'm perfectly okay just waiting and sitting and just keep acquiring some shares here and there.
Yep. Yeah, I do think it takes time, but I think that Boeing recovers at least up into this like 290 area, 289, where that weekly 200 was on that other chart for sure. So cool. Let's move over to Facebook. I mean, this thing, an amazing run out of this pennant pattern. Broke out. This was last earnings right here. Gapped up, faded, filled the gap, and then has gone on just an absolute tear of like a 26% move. It's over $1 trillion, so it joined the $1 trillion club out there. It is gapping down a little bit after hours. Not too bad. Just a few percent there, considering it was literally at an all-time high this morning. I don't think that that's too bad. What were your thoughts on these Facebook earnings here?
Kind of what you would expect Facebook to do. Facebook looks like they did grow. They beat the quarter. They had a nice day today. So everything looks solid as far as that. The one thing that you highlighted pre recording this is their outlook, and I think that's one thing that as an investor, if you're looking to put money somewhere in something that's growing or something that's safe, I think Facebook's safe. I don't think Facebook goes anywhere just with the different platforms they own, especially Instagram. And I think Instagram makes more revenue than Facebook does at this point. So I think Instagram's really their home run. But obviously Facebook's huge. They have WhatsApp, things like that, Messenger, and all of these numbers that they put in the report is a combination of all of those together. I would love to see some kind of breakdown, but I guess it doesn't really matter too much to them. If the money comes to the same pocket, it goes to the same pocket. But I would like to see that. But as far as like users, that's up. I think it was like 7% for daily users, up 7% year over year for monthly users. So the users are still there. People are still using these platforms, and obviously that's going to drive marketing revenue into Facebook as well. And whether you like Facebook, hate Facebook, think they're a little intrusive on your privacy. You talk about something, and all of a sudden the ads start popping up. They're very good at what they do, and they have the crazy amount of data from everybody, and they use it well. So I think it's a smart company, and I think it's something that could be investable. I just don't think at these personal levels right now. It's just a little tough for me to pull some shekels out of my pocket and give it to Facebook at these levels.
Yeah, I mean their average revenue per person. I don't know when they change that per user. I guess they're trying to like, oh, you're a person, you're not just a user of Facebook. So they're trying to make it.
It does make me feel better. Yeah.
Does that make you feel better? $8.21 per person from advertising. I don't know what the other is because advertising is the big thing, and you could see it was like a 56% increase in total revenue year over year, which is pretty wild. But they did have that. We'll go ahead and read it. I highlighted it, but we'll go ahead and read it for everybody that is not into reading and just likes to listen. In the third and fourth quarter of 2021, we expect year-over-year total revenue growth rates to decelerate significantly. That word is pretty pops out to me. Significantly on a sequential basis as we lap periods of increasingly strong growth. So obviously, their comps from last year, because of COVID-19 and the lockdowns and everything else, it's going to be really hard for them to beat that level of growth. So they think that the growth rate's going to decelerate. But they think comparison to like a 2-year average here, it would decelerate modestly, which is still kind of a little worrisome. Like you said earlier, the market's trying to discount earnings going forward in the future, not necessarily what you did now. So especially as more and more of their, like Europe is starting to become a bigger piece of their revenue here. You can see it's over 7 billion now, and they have a lot of like funky legislation going on in Europe. And then obviously if there's if Asia, well, it's not in China, so never mind. They don't have to worry about that. But I think that Europe with some of their legislation could end up hurting Facebook. And they did mention iOS too. I mean, I know that whenever I get those pop-ups that says like, oh, this app wants to track your activity, I always click no. What about you?
Yeah, I go no as well. I don't understand. I mean, I understand why they asked the question. I understand why they want the information, but obviously, I'm just going to choose no. I prefer you
I
not.
want worse ads. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this retest gap is definitely going to fill down here at 351. It's at 360 after hours. But I think anywhere into this like 328 all the way down to 304 is definitely buyable. I would just make sure that I like pyramid into this thing relatively slowly. Otherwise, personally, I like Google a little bit better in the ad revenue space because I don't think they're really as hampered by the iOS changes and privacy stuff as Facebook is.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I mean, Facebook is relying solely on advertising. I mean, they have a couple of the revenue streams as well, but mainly it's a advertising company. Where Google, yes, they're an advertising company, but they do so much more. So you get to invest in a little bit bigger of a basket, I think, with Google over Facebook.
Yep, very true. Let's move on to the next one. PayPal just coming off all-time highs a couple days ago. This one is down, not like significantly, but it's down a decent amount after hours. Let's see, we closed right around there. We're down 5%. I think that's pretty decent size. Gap down. Obviously, there's some support down in here at this 277 area, only about $8 away off of this old resistance. Gonna be new support, but I looked at their earnings and I thought they were pretty good. I mean, you have total payment volume growth 40%, FX growth 36%, 43.5 transactions per active account. That's an 11% growth, so double digits. 27% compounded annual growth rate basis. I thought their numbers were pretty good So, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean their numbers are good. There is that key number in there that did probably, I would say, cause the drop. I don't know if the full 5% drop is due to it, but the eBay numbers are down like 50. Would we say 51%, something like that,
Yep.
from the use of eBay. So that's gonna kill them a little bit, but I think long term they're fine. This would be a more pyramid type investment for me personally, but and I actually like Square a little bit better than PayPal as well.
Yeah, I think PayPal has experienced more of like the explosive growth. However, I know like I still use PayPal all the time, and then obviously Venmo. I think Venmo revenue was up like 70% out there, but eBay was definitely a drag. eBay is going to its own payment service for those that don't know, versus always defaulting to PayPal. So that definitely is a headwind. They called out the headwind. They have a whole slide. I think they have like multiple slides on it actually in here. So it's obviously a little bit of a big deal, but I think PayPal will end up getting over it. But I do, so I like the opportunity to buy the dip on this. If you wanted to start a pyramid, I would probably start mine around 278 and then go all the way back down into like 226 area, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Make sure I like what you're thinking there. Make sure that the levels of the pyramid are wider, because again, I mean, whether I don't know how much the eBay will affect them. It's obviously a huge chunk of what they do, but it's not only, it's not like you're just cutting out the only source of income for PayPal. Uh, a lot of people still have their PayPal accounts. They still use it. They will have some increased competition from elsewhere. But again, PayPal owns Venmo. That's a huge, huge person to person pay app as well. So I think long term, yeah, I think we're going to be fine on PayPal. But look at the run PayPal has had. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. So when things just skyrocket like that, for me, if I'm pyramiding, I have to go wider levels.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, off of the COVID low, and just crazy, crazy run up here. Let's see, COVID low to the high, 280%. So yeah, it's definitely ran up there. One thing I know that myself and a lot of my friends that I talk to that use Venmo, I notice is that like I never take money out of Venmo. Like it ends up, I pay someone for something and then like they pay me for something else, and the money like just goes back and forth and literally stays within Venmo the entire time. I think that has to be a benefit for PayPal, that money sitting there versus coming out of their system. Do you do that too, or do you find that you're taking the money out of it?
As soon as it comes in, I take it out. Yeah. Well, don't forget too. I mean, a lot of people, they keep money in Venmo, but it's not FDIA. It's not FDIC insured or anything like that too. So technically, if Venmo just disappears one day, I mean, money's gone. Like, not saying it will, but there's no security with Venmo. I mean, people think it's just safe, but there's nothing backing your Venmo. So for me, I just pull it out, put it somewhere safe. I mean, it's easy enough. If I have to pay somebody, it just transfers right from the bank account. So I take it out all the time. I just rather,
Oh, okay.
but I'm not an active. You might be a bigger active user than me.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
Chipotle
much.
burrito money, like just flows back and forth,
Right. Yeah.
constantly. All right. So yeah, that's our earnings report for this evening. Tomorrow we'll be back with another one. We got some big ones coming up tomorrow. Amazon, Pinterest, and I can't remember the other one we were gonna do. Amazon, Pinterest, and let's see. Tomorrow. MasterCard. Yeah, so another payment one. So Amazon, Pinterest, and MasterCard tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in and love life, live life, trade it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks so much, Dan.
See you guys later.